today is titled The Virtues of Three Mothers. And I love Mother's Day. Of course, I would consider myself a mama's boy. That's true. Yes. How many people here get mama's boy or girl? There's a few here. Everybody else is daddy. Okay, dads are alright. You know, I have my oldest son, Vika. I don't know if he's a mama's boy or daddy's boy, but I do tell him he has to look at his mother sometimes. That's probably a good thing. You know, my two daughters are 10 and 6, and they always come to me when mom says no. You know? They're like, Daddy, you can't have it. No, Alex. But they are mama's girls, you know, when stuff really hits the fan, when life really hits them down, and it's usually Luke, my son, you know, tearing up their Barbie dolls and taking suckers out with the Nerf gun. The knife blows up, you know, and it hasn't. They go to mom. Yeah, they do. They go to mom. And for me, I love my mom. I do. She's amazing. We kind of grew up real poor, but sometimes we doing well in prosperity. And my dad has a construction company, and my dad was kind of gnarly. Like, it was really hard on me. Made me work from a really young age, and it was good. It made me tough. You know, my mom is a little different. She was hard on me when she needed to be, and compassionate on me when I needed to. I went through a lot in my life with my mom. I put her through some really tough times for sure. And she raised me though. She raised me to love God and to love people. And she was there with me when I had my first son. And she was there with me when I got divorced from my first wife. She loaned me money to pay my rent. She loaned me money to pay the drug dealers that were trying to kill me. And she was there when I laid unconscious on a hospital gurney from an overdose. And my stomach get pumped. She was there for that too. And I remember 7 years ago, when I actually became a Christian 8 years ago, and a year later I was going back and forth with my mom in the scriptures about salvation and about being a Christian for real. And I remember going back and forth and wrestling with the scriptures back and forth with my mom, and you know, finally she decided to give her life to God, and I actually baptized my mom. Yeah. It was amazing. For sure, I'm very blessed to have an awesome mom, and I'm dedicating this lesson to my mom, who will watch it later, hopefully. And I know the sad reality, though, is that not everyone is blessed with an awesome mom growing up. I know that's true out there, and there are some awesome moms in this church. You could adopt one. I adopted 2 moms. You know, I adopted Connie as my mom, and I Susie up in Hilo because I think I like to have 2 moms. And my wife, my beautiful, amazing wife, is a mother to my children, and sometimes she's a mother to me, and I even call her mom sometimes. And she does mother me. And today, though, for Mother's Day, we're going to study out the virtues of 3 incredible and heroic mothers from the Bible, and see what we can learn. It doesn't matter if you're a mom or not a mom. If you've never had a mom, it doesn't matter. We can all learn something from these 3 incredible mothers, and we can hopefully apply it to our lives today. So, point number 1, the first mother we saw is the bravery of Sarai. Bravery is a beautiful virtue. Turn to 1 Peter chapter 3. We'll read a little bit about Sarai. 1 Peter chapter 3. The Bible says, your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair and wearing of gold jewelry and fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to make themselves beautiful. They were submissive to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her master. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. You know, true beauty looks on the outward. Sometimes we can focus on the outward appearance. That's not what true beauty is. That's not what true beauty is. The Bible here is saying that true beauty is of your inner self. It is an inner beauty of a calm, quiet, gentle, and submissive spirit. That's what's attractive to God. Looks aren't everything. Looks aren't everything. Yeah. Sarai was considered beautiful because she did not give in to her fear. She was considered beautiful because she was brave. Yeah. Sometimes we're going to read about Sarah in Genesis, and she's not crazy brave. She took a little too far a couple of times even. It's pretty interesting. You guys want to check it out. It's in Genesis chapter 15.
Come on, bro.
So, God promised Sarai and her husband something incredible. He promised them that they would pack up, leave the comfort of their home, give up the purpose of their life, and have a new purpose of their life, which is to be the mother and father of all of God's people and spread across the known world at that time. That was His promise to them. God gave them and Abraham and Sarah, a new purpose for their life. In Genesis chapter 5, Genesis 15, and verse 5. Sorry. In verse 5 it says, He took him outside. God took Abram outside and said, look up at the heavens and count the stars if you can. Count them. Then He said to them, so shall your offspring be. Imagine that, looking up at the stars and thinking, wow, I'm gonna have that many kids, that many offspring. Not physical, but like back then it was a physical. They would have kids, and their kids would multiply and they'd spread as God's people across the mapped out world of that day. That's crazy. Her purpose, her new purpose in life, according to God's promise, would be that she'd be the mother of God's people for all time. That's crazy. And it's interesting if you read on, we're going to read on a little bit here. It was 25 years, 25 long years before God fulfilled that promise. When she was 90 years old. So God made a promise and fulfilled it 25 years later. That's crazy. And Sarai, throughout this time, was not always very brave. Many years passed, and Sarai had no children. She began to doubt, she began to have fear that God would not fulfill her promise, and she began to take matters into her own hand. Turn to Genesis chapter 16 and verse 1. The Bible says, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my maidservant, perhaps I can build a family through her. Abram agreed to what Sarah said. And so after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai took his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar, and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. You might think this is brave of her to give her maidservant to her husband and risk losing love and losing affection, losing attention, and risk having God's people be built through another woman. You might say, that's brave of her to work hard to fulfill God's promise. She was trying to do what was right to fulfill God's plan, but she was doing it the wrong way. That's not what God said. He said, I'll make it through you, Sarah. And so she gave in to her fear and did something foolish. I mean, back then you have to imagine, though, that it's understandable, right? I mean, she was barren. That was considered to be a curse, and she was getting old, and it wasn't happening. And so she took matters in her own hands. She caused her to not trust God because it was taking so long. To not trust His promise there. And try to do things her own way. Don't want to be brave in the wrong way and do something foolish like that. Abraham was kind of an idiot. And he's like, that's a great plan to me. Bring on. You know? It's like, wow. Okay, good job, buddy. Fortunately, God works through our fear and our lack of trust to be better. He makes us better. God always comes through on His promises. And He doesn't necessarily give us a specific time when He promises stuff to us, not necessarily. We can be tempted to doubt when the fulfilling of these promises aren't happening right away in our time. You know, we can start to give in to fear like that. In Genesis chapter 17, God renames Sarai. He names her Sarah. And He again promises her to make her the mother of many nations. And she takes her bravery a little bit too far once again. Check this out in Genesis chapter 18, continuing on. Verse 10. Then the Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my master is old, how will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Will I return to you at the point? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid. So she lied and said, I did not laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh. This is pretty interesting. You know, God has to repeat His promises to us. time after time because we forget. If you look throughout the scriptures, God repeats His promises to us. He reminds us time after time because we forget. That's how we develop our faith, by being reminded time after time in the scripture. You might say, why did Jesus always say everything 2 or 3 times? He's reminding us. He's developing our faith because we easily forget stuff. You know, this time around, God does give them a time frame. He says, I'll be back in a year and I will fulfill my promise in 1 year. You know, and then Sarah kind of laughs, chuckles within herself. She's like, yeah, right, God, whatever. And I think she found out the hard way that God can read our thoughts and our minds and knows our intentions. And she's like, uh-oh. And then she got scared and lied about it. But fortunately, God's super graceful and merciful. Even when we laugh at Him and lie to His face, He can still forgive us. And she said, I didn't laugh. Yes, you did. You know, her bravery kind of melted away when she got called out on her sin there. Melted away. Whenever we give in to fear and doubt, it's because we lack the faith that God can overcome anything. There's no problem too big or small for the Creator of the universe. Fortunately, God is very merciful and very patient with all of us all the time. God always fulfills His promises. Let's read on what happens here in Genesis 21. Fast forward 1 year when God comes back to fulfill the promise. In verse 1. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as He had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what He had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised it. Abraham gave him the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children, yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Wow, God fulfills His promises just like He said He would. When we are brave, God is gracious to us. She was brave and she didn't give to her fear. From time and time again, she slipped up and she messed up, but she pushed through that fear and did what was right. When we take the risk of entrusting the purpose of our life to Him, He rewards us. You have to imagine Sarah picked up everything, moved away from her family, her comfort zone, and moved all the way to this foreign land to bear children and offspring for many nations. But that had to be scary. She gave over her own life, the will for her own life and her purpose, left everything behind to fulfill God's purpose and His plans and receive the blessings and the promises. Sarah, an imperfect woman that trusted God's plan. Even though it was physically impossible to have a child at 90 years old, bravely followed God and even laughed at God. Now she's laughing with God, though, which is kind of cool. She gave up her life. You know, my wife is amazing. Like the first pastor read in 1 Peter, she's beautiful. My wife has always been beautiful. She's very brave, but my wife wasn't always very brave. Some people might have told her when she first started dating me before we were Christians, why you're brave to date that guy. You dated him, foolishly brave, I don't know. But God had to work on Beth, and it did take some time, you know. God promised Beth, though, that she would be fruitful, and if she stuck to His commands and obeyed Him. You know, Beth, when we were studying the Bible to become disciples many, many years ago, 8.5 to be exact, Beth was apprehensive and she was fearful about giving up the purpose of her life to give it over to God's purpose. She was afraid to do that, and it took some convincing. It took some time. And when she became a Christian, she was amazing. But a few years later, they asked us to move to Kona, away from her family, away from her friends that she knew in our church there, away from her job to an unknown place here in Kona, which is not that far away. But I'm not gonna lie, Beth was afraid. She wasn't feeling too brave about it, but she eventually got her heart right about it. And now she's doing incredible things for God. And God is fulfilling His promises in her life. And that we have 3 amazing children. And Beth has been baptizing and has many amazing, beautiful children, spiritual children here in this church that she's baptized over the years. It's amazing and it's incredible. In John 15, verse 7, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, Jesus said, ask whatever you wish and it will be given to you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. When we believe God's promises, that we'll bear much fruit for Him, making other people, helping other people become Christians, making disciples. God promises us something here, that we'll be fruitful for Him, we'll be productive for Him, and that's what God promise has been fulfilled in my wife. She gave up her family, friends, job, and comfort, left it all behind. And now we are bearing much fruit. And it's incredible how God fulfills His promises all the time. So my question is, what areas in your life are you giving way to fear? What areas in your life do you need to be brave in? What areas in your life are you not trusting God's promise that He'll take care of you and that He has a great plan for you in your life? You know, I had a conversation with my spiritual mom, Connie, yesterday. And Connie, she's amazing. Right? She's having a really difficult time. She's going through a trial right now at her job. And so her boss is persecuting her, co-workers are persecuting her. She's having a hard time financially, and she's really going through some tough times right now. And I know that Connie has a temptation to give into some fear and to give into some doubt. And we had a great, I just told Connie, you need to be courageous. You need to put some steel in your spine. You're saved. You're going to heaven. Don't let people around you affect you negatively. Don't let the world get you down. You know, the same goes for all of us when we're really going through it. And we all, from time to time in our life, we all really go through it. Stuff happens. Life happens. And it may seem like our purpose for God might get a little bit murky. And we don't quite know what we should do. And we start to think maybe God doesn't have a really good plan after all. And maybe God's not going to come through for us. And maybe I'd be better off going back to my old way of life, doing things my own way. And the people around me, maybe they're not giving me good advice. Maybe they don't know what they're talking about. This crazy pastor with tattoos on his hand, maybe he's kind of nuts. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, I'm here to tell you, put some steel in your spine. Amen. God is working it out. Amen. Be patient as He fulfills His promises. Be reminded in the Scriptures over and over again of God's incredible plan of salvation for everyone. For the whole world. Fulfill God's purpose in your life to bear much fruit for God. Be joyful and courageous no matter what's happening in your life. Be brave. Don't let negative people make you negative. Don't let outside circumstances hurt you inside. God has a great plan for each and every one of you. Do not give in to fear. All you have to do is be brave for God. Point number 2, the determination of Jochebed. Anybody here know who that is? Jochebed? Jochebed? In Exodus chapter 1 is where we'll be reading here. This is pretty cool. You guys are going to like this one. You know, back at this time in the Israelites' history, they had been taken slaves by the Egyptians, and things were not going well for them. There was a new pharaoh in town. They started getting afraid of all the Abraham and Sarah's descendants because they were multiplying rapidly, and they're starting to get like worried that they were going to take over Egypt. They had so many of them. They're having so many male children. So the pharaoh, he calls in these 2 midwives who are delivering the children of the Israelites, and he says, if the baby comes out and it's a boy, I need you to kill the baby. And they're like, oh. And so they don't go and obey his commands. They're not about to kill a bunch of children. And Pharaoh gets upset that none of the babies are getting killed. And then he says, well, I'll have my soldiers do it. So he orders his soldiers to go around. And if any male children are born, to take the male children and throw them in the river and kill them. That's what he's telling his soldiers to do. Now we're going to read about Jochebed, who is Moses' mother. And in Exodus chapter 2, in verse 1. Now a man in the house of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbed. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. And the girl went out to get the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I'll pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. Wow, this is amazing. So Moses' mother here, Jochebed, has a baby. And she sees that it's a cute baby. She loves her baby. And it's fine. It's not like some ordinary baby. And all of our babies are not ordinary. They're extraordinary. When you see your child, That's an extraordinary baby. It's better than your baby. You know? And so she takes the baby, and she does it. She nurses it for 3 months, but she's afraid because these soldiers are hunting babies.
Yeah.
And babies cry, don't they? At 3 months, they cry all the time sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? You're just gonna take it. I was like, this guy. So anyway, she comes up with a plan. And a determined mother, not even a king can stop.
Yeah.
She's determined that her baby will be taken care of no matter what. She has this great plan. I'm going to put him in the river in this waterproof basket, and then I'm going to send his older sister to watch and make sure everything goes okay. And I imagine she kind of timed it. There's the princess, here we go, let's see what happens. And the sister follows along and like, oh, a baby. It's like, oh, here, look, yeah, you're ready, this is a baby. You want me to go find a mom? I know a mom that could nurse this. She goes and got the baby's actual mom. And she ends up getting paid to take care of her own baby, which is awesome. And then when the child gets older, the princess takes the child, Moses, into her own house to be a part of the royal family. And he raises up and becomes a great leader and leads all the people out of Egypt, out of exile. What an incredible thing that happens from a determined mother that trusts in God's plan. Jochebed's faith and determination saved Moses' life. Moses was born into a hostile world.
Yeah.
But he had one thing in his favor. His mom and his dad, they were believers. They were followers of God. They had faith and they trusted it. They were determined their child would be taken care of no matter what. You know, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23, by faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because he saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. Imagine that, hiding in your house with your little baby, worrying about soldiers coming in and tossing him in a river and drowning him. Imagine the fear she had to go through. Imagine the consequences she had to face. Imagine the outward circumstances of what was happening in her life, the decisions she was making to follow God. She didn't do this only out of maternal instinct to be a good mom, but she did it out of faith in God. What a great plan, too, she had, right? Put him in a basket, throw him in a river, see what happens. That was a great plan. I don't know. You know, God's love throughout the Bible is described as unfailing.
Yeah.
God's love is unfailing. God's love to me is like a river. It's always flowing. It never stops flowing, and it goes straight to heaven. It never stops. For us today, for our children, and for us to experience the benefit of God's love, we need to be let down into this river. We can't just toss kids in the river and see if they swim. We got to have a good plan to get them into the river.
Yeah.
She did that. She came up with a plan. She made a waterproof ark. Put the baby in the river and let him go, and had a sister watch to make sure everything's okay. Not just sink or swim. Good luck, buddy. 3 months old. See if he swims. She had a plan. We have a plan here at our church. We have our Kinky's Kingdom, the Kids' Kingdom back there, right? And it's amazing. But last week we had a little bit of a situation with the children. And one of the Kids' Kingdom workers got a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit frustrated because the little children were being a little extra fussy than normal. And of course I'm not singling anybody out, and I did talk to the sister about this, and she said it's okay if I share it with everybody so that we can all learn from it. Right? Because that's what we're here to do, learn to do better.
Yeah.
To have a plan, to put it into place, and to do better. And so, on any given Sunday, we have 12 plus kids in there, right?
Yeah.
And our church is growing. Our church is going to grow. We'll outgrow this room in a very short time, I imagine. But for the time being, we're right here. The kids are right there. And kids are just going to be kids. They're awesome. We love them. And sometimes they're rambunctious, sometimes they're noisy, sometimes they're fussy. And that's okay. We love kids. And then the kids are amazing. We love them. And of course, we don't want anybody missing out on the service. We don't want anybody getting bummed out or overwhelmed about the children. So my challenge to all of the mothers in here is if you hear your baby being a little bit extra, put your back there and see, you need a hand, put the thumbs up, because you can hear what's going on. It's not far away. It's only right there. And for the Kids Kingdom workers, the kikis, when they're overwhelming, it's a little bit too much. Ask for help. Ask for help. Just come out here, tap mom on the shoulder. I need a hand. Kids extra today. And now Martin and Lynn, I want to lift them up. They are the children's ministry, Kids Kingdom workers. They're doing an excellent job overseeing the children's ministry. The children's ministry is a big part of our ministry. They're about half the size of our church is the kids, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And we love the children. And Martin and Lynn, thank you so much for doing an incredible job. Yeah, for sure, you know. And as we grow, we're going to get into a bigger facility, but for the time being, let's help out the children's ministry workers, all the parents and everybody. And you know, the thing too is for the single brothers and sisters that don't have children, hey, well, think about the parents that have to have these kids around 24/7. Oh, yeah, look great for a few minutes, 2 hours, whatever. Come on, help out, you guys. And I don't know, that's where we come to church, right? We come to church to serve. Amen. We come to church to give. And it's an honor, it's a blessing to give. Yeah. So let's read a few scriptures to get our hearts right about the honor and privilege of the children and the mission to serve them, okay? Matthew chapter 18, I'll just read it, you guys don't have to turn there. Verse 10 says, "See to it that you do not look down on one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." In Mark chapter 9, Jesus says he took a little child and sat among him, taking him in his arms. He said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." In verse 42, he says that if anyone causes one of these little ones who believes in me to sin, it'd be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a large millstone tied around his neck. Luke chapter 18, verse 15, people were also bringing babies to Jesus to have him touch them. When the disciples saw this, they rebuked them. But Jesus called the children to him and said, "Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. I tell you the truth. Anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it." There's lots we can learn from these passages here. Thanks for bringing home my point, boy. Everybody, baby DK. Just nap time. It's fine. You know, kids have guardian angels, and they will rat you out to God when they see his face if you look down on his children while they're here on earth. Jesus thought very highly of the children. He loved them very much, and they were a vital part of his ministry. We as adults, we can learn lots on how to please God, to have childlike faith, to trust, to be obedient, and to love. Children teach us that so well. Patience, they teach us patience. If you don't have kids, know this. Caring for children prepares you to care for God's church. 1 Timothy 4:3. Today's nannies are tomorrow's women's ministry leaders.
Amen. That's true, bro.
Jesus was very protective of the children. Very protective of them. If you hurt them, I'm watching you, and I'm going to deal with you. It'd be better to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around your neck.
Yeah.
We love kids.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
Now, Moses had some incredible women in his life as a king. Incredible women. Think about it. He had a determined and faithful mother that had a plan and put it into practice, and it was awesome. He had a watchful older sister. He also had a surrogate mother who was a princess to a king. That's amazing women that Moses had in his life. And how they impacted him is very evident in how well he led his people. So whether you're a guy or a girl, whether you're a mom or a dad, you don't have a child, you can impact the kingdom.
Amen.
You absolutely can. Don't miss out on this wonderful opportunity. I'd be fired up if I could do the kids class right now. Have somebody else do this. I love being around the children. It's amazing. You can help the kids. All you need is a good plan and lots of determination, and never give up. Jochebed had some heavy circumstances in her life. There's no doubt about it. The consequences for disobeying the king were death. Death to her and her children and her husband. She faced severe consequences for her decisions, but she was willing to do it no matter what. Are you determined to follow God no matter what the consequences are? Are you determined to follow God and trust in his plan no matter what the situation is in your life or the consequences are? Are you determined to love God and trust him no matter what? Be determined to help others into the river of God's unfailing love. Point number 3, the faith of Mary. You know, the Virgin Mary is the most prominent figure in all of human history next to Jesus, her son. She stands alone in all of history as the only woman who ever supernaturally conceived and gave birth to a child. No one has ever done that before or since. She is adored and admired by millions of people worldwide. What an incredible woman of great faith because of an impossible miracle. Turn to Luke chapter 1.
Come on, bro.
Luke chapter 1.
David, choose your will, bro.
Luke chapter 1 and verse 26. In the 6th month, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, the descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. He will be great and be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I'm a virgin?" The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. And she who was said to be barren is in her 6th month. For nothing is impossible with God." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May it be to me as you have said." Then the angel left her. Wow, a teenage girl, probably around the age of 13, a lot of scholars believe. This angel appears to her and tells her that you're highly favored, that God's going to bless you, and that you're going to have a child. And he's going to name Jesus, and he's going to be the Savior of the world. That's incredible. Wow, she must have been taken aback. Like, wow, what kind of greeting is this? And she doesn't doubt here. This isn't a lack of faith. She just says, how is that going to happen? I'm a little kid, and I'm not even married yet, and I'm a virgin. How could I possibly have a child myself? And she has some doubt. Not some doubt, but she doesn't, not that she had doubt, but she's just saying, okay, God, I'm willing to do it, but how? And the angel says, the Holy Spirit, it's going to be a miracle. It's going to be awesome. You're going to be a great mom. Don't worry about it. And she's up. Her response is incredible. "I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said." What great faith in a little child. Childlike faith, right there. Was she afraid? Maybe. Was she unsure? Possibly. Do you think maybe she thought, I can't do it? You know, did she worried about what her husband would say? About coming home pregnant and not married yet? What her family would think? I'd imagine in her head she's running some scenarios. Because back then, being a single mom, she'd probably be homeless. She'd probably be starving on the streets, hungry. Her family would probably kick her out. She'd be ostracized from the community. It's a big deal back then to be a single mom. Now, our single moms are amazing, and we love supporting and helping all the moms. You know, but back then, it wasn't quite like that. It wasn't quite like that back then. "I am the Lord's servant," she says. Simple as that. That's great faith right there. That's great faith right there. And of course she wasn't perfect. You know, she's not a perfect human being. Later on as she's an adult in Mark chapter 3, Mary thought that Jesus had lost his mind. And she went to take charge of him with her kids. In Mark chapter 3, verse 20, you don't have to turn there, it says, "Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, he is out of his mind." The reading further on says, "Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. The crowd was around him, and they told him, 'Your mother and brothers are outside. They're looking for you.' 'Who are my mother and my brothers?' he asked. Then he looked at those seated in the circle around him and he said, 'Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and my sister and my mother.'" Wow, Jesus was a hard line. You know, he prioritized his spiritual family over even his physical family. And Mary here forgot somewhere along the way, she forgot who Jesus was, the Savior of the world, the Messiah. She forgot that an angel came and told her about these things, and she lost her faith in that. And she tried to take matters into her own hands. She rallied her kids around to go take control of Jesus, take charge of him. Jesus responded by Mary's lack of faith with resolute faith of his own. When we are faithless, he is faithful.
Yeah.
The outcome is incredible. The outcome is Mary musters great faith later on in life, and she comes back to God in faith along with her children. In John chapter 19, we'll see what happens here. Fortunately, Mary came back. I mean, imagine standing outside and your son coming out. Imagine that, telling your mom that. Hey, you guys tell my mom, that's not my mom. Mom would be mad. But hurt, you know? John chapter 19.
Come on, bro.
John chapter 19, and starting in verse 25. The most incredible trial a mother could ever have to go through right here. Verse 25. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, Dear woman, here is your son. And to the disciple, Here is your mother. From that time on, the disciples took her into his home. Imagine that. She had to watch her son, whom she bore miraculously. She nursed him, nurtured him, and fed him, and took care of him, raised him up. Yes, she lost her faith along the way somewhere, but she came back to him. And she had to watch him die the most horrible, gruesome, painful, shameful death a mother would ever have to see. I can't even imagine. And that wasn't even my own son. It was her son. She watched him die on the cross in front of her. That had to hurt. She was losing her son in the most horrible way. It's so significant here that Jesus, even on the cross, is still teaching and giving and loving and sacrificing. And that he gives the young apostle John, who wrote this book, he gives him to Mary so that she has another son to love. And he took her into his home to be his mother. How caring and compassionate and loving and Jesus is here. He sees that in his mom. It takes great faith to put your spiritual family over your physical family. And that's exactly what Jesus did here, even with giving John to his mom. His physical family, he loved them, no doubt. But his spiritual family, those who are doing the will of God, that was what was important to him. The most important of all. You know, for me, I love my mom and dad so much. They're over on Oahu. And my dad, sadly, recently has decided to walk away from God. He's given into some false doctrines, and he's actually sadly led one of my sisters astray as well. And what's happening, I'm not here to bash my dad or talk about his sin or anything like that, but unfortunately what's happening is it's causing my mother's faith to even waver because of the situation and because of the influence in her life. Her faith is starting to waver. My dad's an awesome dad. I really appreciate all the things he's done. He's the reason I'm a Christian. He's the one that made me come to church when I was all bust up on drugs, and I ended up getting baptized by my dad. And I really appreciate it, but sadly he makes his own decisions, as do we all. And it's interesting to note that, you know, the relationships that are closest to us, our physical family, have great impact in our lives. They have great impact in our lives, and it's why it's so important to follow our spiritual family's path, those who do the will of God. Yeah. Because all our families are amazing and we love them, but they don't always do God's will. They're not always doing God's will. You know, Mary had a husband when she was young. His name was Joseph, and according to the scriptures, he was a righteous man. He was obedient to the angel and to God and what they told him to do, and he was very compassionate. Even deciding to take Mary, he was pregnant, and weren't even married to her. He raised Jesus himself. But, you know, he is not mentioned anywhere in the scriptures. Joseph isn't beyond the adolescence of Jesus. When he was a teen, he was a young child, and they just don't mention him no more. And a lot of scholars believe that it's very possible and likely that he died before Jesus started his ministry. No one's really sure. He may have fallen away or walked away from God or left Mary. We just don't know for sure. But most likely they say he died. So in the passage we read in Mark, it's interesting because Mary's mother and Mary's brothers went to take charge and to control Jesus. And Joseph is not mentioned here, so most likely he's already gone. And our experiences with those people we spend the most time with, our physical family, they impact us more than we realize here. And I'm stretching a bit here. I don't know if this is a possible scenario. The Bible doesn't say it. This is my opinion. But maybe Joseph left, maybe he died, maybe he fell away from God. But maybe this caused Mary to doubt the loss of her husband in one way, shape, or form or another. Maybe that's why she rallied her kids to take charge of Jesus, because of the impact her husband had in her life and the loss of, in whatever way she lost her husband. Maybe that's why she lost her faith, because of that influence. We don't know. The Bible does not say specifically. But for certain, our physical family impacts us greatly today, how we are. And our physical family does not always do the will of our Father in heaven. They don't. That's why it's so important to put our spiritual family even above our physical family.
Yeah.
Whether it's a spouse, whether it's our parents, whether it's our brothers and sisters, aunties and uncles and granny, or whoever it may be. We put our spiritual family first. No matter what, we always have faith in God and do God's will, no matter what's happening around us. Jesus did that, and the outcome speaks for itself. His mother and his brothers, they all come back to God. In the book of Acts, they're mentioned there. As believers, they came back to God. James led the first century church for a period of time and wrote the book of James. That's Jesus' brother. His mother Mary was there as well. That's incredible. I believe that by all accounts written in the Bible that Joseph died saved as well. I don't know. We'll see. As for me and my household, we will follow the Lord. Amen. You know, my challenge is to have great faith in God and His plan. Don't let people or circumstances deter you in any way, whether it be a family member, a co-worker, or anyone. After all, God wants our families to be saved as well, and He has the best plan for it. When we prioritize our spiritual brothers and sisters, so often our family members are starting to feel left out, like I'm missing something amazing. And then they want to follow God too. It's really incredible how Jesus' plan works so well all the time.
Yeah.
I have family members that aren't saved, that aren't interested in God at all. All I do is share good news with them about what our church is doing. I don't stop loving them. I certainly don't follow them or let them influence me in a negative way. The best way to help your physical family follow God is to follow God yourself. Amen? Amen. You know, in closing, the three incredible virtues of three heroic mothers. The bravery of Sarah, impossible to be the mother of all God's people at age 90. And yet she did it. She did it. Be brave in the face of the impossible. God will work it out. He will deliver what He promises. I promise you. The determination of Jochebed, the woman with a plan to save her child. She was determined and never took for granted the incredible honor she has to take care of her child. We learn from children. We love children. We nurture them. We watch out for them. And when they're old, they won't forget it. They'll do great things for God. Yeah. Be determined to help other people enjoy God's love as well and benefit from it. The faith of Mary, the single most important event in all of history. The birth, the miraculous birth of Jesus, His life, His resurrection after He died. That's incredible. That's the single most important event of all time. An incredible, faithful teenage mom started it all. That's amazing. She was imperfect. We're all imperfect. She wavered, we wavered. But God is faithful no matter what we're doing. His promises never cease. Jesus is an incredible example, showing her the way back. Shows us all the way back, definitely a faith. All of us can relate to this morning.
Yeah.
You know, I was watching a video in Africa recently on Facebook. And it has a river in Africa, and there's an impala, a baby impala. It's crossing this river, and it's just trying to make it. And you see in the distance this giant crocodile coming for the baby. And you see the mom of the impala watching, like, oh no. And the mom, crazy mom, brave mom, jumps into the river and gets between its baby and the crocodile. The last thing the mom sees is the baby making out the bag right before the crocodile tears her to pieces. Sacrificed her whole life for her child. This is an animal in the kingdom out there, the animal kingdom. And I just love that example of a sacrificial mom. And this morning, I want everyone to remember their mothers. Whether it be a spiritual mom or a physical mom, remember your mom and the great sacrifice she did for you. Carried you in her womb for 9 months. Sacrificed her time, her life, gave up everything so that you could live. So that you could have life. The mom's body got messed up even having kids sometimes, you know. And remember your moms. Remember your mom and show them some love. This is your day, mothers. Enjoy it. Make sure everybody here calls mom if you can, or encourages one of the moms here to show some love to the moms here. I love you all so much. Thank you. Have a great day.